right. Hey guys, how's it going?
Kelly.
Hey Kelly, how's it going?
Good. Are you guys in Colorado right now?
We're in Denver, yeah. Still some snow on the ground, which is great. So we're both skiers, so it's been nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I was actually just out at Winter Park yesterday, and a lot of snow on the ground. So we're enjoying the winter weather. It still stays
Cool.
sun in Denver, so it's it'll snow and then it'll melt within a day, and it's beautiful weather out here. It's a good place to have our headquarters.
Awesome. How did you guys meet?
That's a good question. So Ryan and I have known each other for about 10 years. We both met in Ecuador when we were serving in the Peace Corps. So 2008 to 2010, we both served as Peace Corps volunteers and pretty much had a similar experience because we lived with the same tribe and did similar work, similar cultural experience, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, I mean Clay has been my best friend for about 10 years, ever since that first experience we had together in the Peace Corps. He was the closest volunteer to my site, so we were working on a lot of the same things. We lived with the same indigenous group. So we became passionate about a lot of the same activities and causes in life, and Spanish. We both gained an affinity and a skill set in Spanish, and we're both fluent in Spanish. And then the second would be a real appreciation and passion for grassroots work, and brought Clay into the recruiting realm. But he can talk a little bit more about that and how he started in his efforts in recruiting.
Yeah, thanks. That's a nice transition. Can you hear us okay, Kelly?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Sometimes you cut in and out, but
Okay.
it's okay.
So yeah, basically after my 4 years in the Peace Corps, I worked on dairy farms for a couple of years and managed and recruited workers, primarily in Mexico, for dairy, and learned a lot, plethora of knowledge and experience doing just HR consulting and translation, recruiting. Some of these farms that I recruited and managed for had people from Puerto Rico, and so I kind of like kept that in the back of my head and worked with these people from Puerto Rico, recruiting them, and eventually a year or two after that job, I started MRC, Martin Recruiting and Consulting, that primarily works primarily focuses on recruiting people specifically from Puerto Rico for what started out as the landscape industry, but now it's for the hospitality industry, manufacturing, construction, landscaping, and pretty much any other industry that needs labor.
So about 2 years ago, year and a half to 2 years ago, I was in Panama working on my PhD. I'm actually an ecologist by training, so this is all very new to me, I should say. It was new to me. And after a year and a half of experience now, it's becoming much more familiar to me, and I actually really love this work. But I became involved when I was there in Panama. I was in the field collecting data. I got a call from Clay, and he was headed to Puerto Rico, and he said, "Hey, any chance you have some time to meet me in Puerto Rico for a month?"
One-way ticket.
Yeah, one-way ticket to Puerto Rico. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I think at first he said like 2 weeks, and so I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can." There's a lull in my data collection. I didn't have that much going on. It was a good time for me to go help Clay. So I flew to Puerto Rico, and Clay met me in this silly-looking purple Jeep, and
reggaeton blaring.
Reggaeton blaring, and we rented a hotel for a month. It's like $300 for the month, yeah. And we just kind of posted up, and we started job fairs. And so these in various corners of the island, we attracted people who were interested in these positions, and we met with people individually, and we were able to
establish a network.
Yeah, essentially.
And trust.
Establish a network and trust of these people in Puerto Rico, and so that's allowed us to. That's sort of been our springboard, and now we have recruiters on the island working for us, and yeah, just like Clay said, we have a lot of trust there. So, Clay likes to make the claim that we are the most trusted recruiting organization that's working now on the island, and And I wholeheartedly believe that's true.
Yeah. And I want to back up. That time was amazing when it was actually spring of 2017 when I went to Puerto Rico for like a month and a half straight and Ryan came. That's when things were getting, taking off. But probably 5 months before that was when I met you for the first time. And when I was starting my business, I knew there was like a big need for labor in the industry and H-2B problems. And so I started doing a lot of research and reading landscape magazines, and I know you remember this. And so I saw you commented on some online journal, and then I wrote down your information in like my spiral notebook, and then I hit you up on LinkedIn, email, like your website, and I think you kind of responded, and then I saw you at GIE at the Young Professionals Happy Hour, and I walked up and I'm like, "Hey Kelly, I'm Clay Martin," and you were like, "Wow, you were very persistent." And,
that's exactly what I said. You were very persistent.
Yeah, but I appreciate both you guys as being friends and colleagues. My business wouldn't be as successful as it is and where it is without both of you guys. So, you've always helped me with my marketing and my website and done an incredible job with that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, Clay, you've been tremendously successful in social networking. I know that's how you met Kelly. But that's also how you've met a lot of your clients and how you've established these contacts in the industry. And Clay was able to bring me on and provide me more work when we started establishing a bigger client base, obviously. And so when that happened, I moved from the recruiting side to more of the account management, client management side. And so that has given me a very in-depth appreciation for what it takes for clients and candidates to develop a blooming relationship that ultimately is successful. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to focus our talk on here.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, so let's dig into that a little bit and talk about what makes people successful and some of the great, interesting stories that you've heard from times that recruiting from Puerto Rico has gone really, really well.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously there's a huge labor shortage in America, but I like to look at it as, yes, there's a labor problem, but I like to look at it as a retention problem. That's what I tell people. I wrote an article a couple months ago for Landscape Magazine, and it was, it said, focus the shift from recruiting to retention. And I firmly believe that is what people need to do. And so MRC, we've worked with over 100 operations from all over the country, and we have seen and learned so much. And that's obviously what we're here, to talk about right now. I would say the number one thing that makes a difference is just establishing rapport and trust and camaraderie. And how you do that is unique to your business, but there's so many different ways that you can do that, which we will discuss. But what it comes, I've seen over and over again, it doesn't matter how much you pay people if they're going to stay or not. I mean, it does matter, but that's not the biggest thing. In the end, it's how people are treated. And that starts from day one. That starts from your training, from your orientation and ongoing. And it's just like any other relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or business, you need to constantly be invested. And, our most successful clients are the ones that are fully invested and go above and beyond for their employees and the candidates that we recruit.
Absolutely. I mean, when we're recruiting, we're not only recruiting individuals from the island, we're recruiting clients. And we vet our clients just as much as we vet the candidates that are coming to work for these employers, because we've worked with people that just don't provide the environment and don't have the company culture that it takes to make this successful. I mean, it needs to be, it's a two-way street. Both parties need to do their part. We need to get people that are ready to work, that have good attitudes, on the candidate side, and they can be green. They don't necessarily need a tremendous amount of experience or even any experience, as long as they have a great attitude. But then, by the same token, we need to be looking at these clients that have a platform where they're able to welcome these individuals in, make them feel like a family, make them feel like they have room to grow, they have room to learn, also provide effective training, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But this is really a two-way street, because if these candidates come in, retention is a huge issue. If they don't like it, Puerto Ricans are American citizens, so they can go anywhere they please when they get there if they aren't happy with the work conditions that they're provided with. 22% of new hirees in the country leave within 45 days of being hired, and that's a general number. So imagine the landscaping industry. I imagine is even higher than that.
I'm sure Kelly knows that.
Yeah.
So that those first 48 hours are absolutely critical in retaining these employees.
As you're building your mission around being the most trusted in Puerto Rico and recruiting, what are some of the strategies you use to help your clients with that process on bringing somebody in, whether it's from preparing to bring them in and then up to the 45 or 60 days or 1 year that they've been with them?
That's a great question. So we can't give all of our trade secrets, but we will give a few today. I would say, we have a document, we call it Tips for Success, and we have compiled this over the past 2 years by utilizing information and feedback from where our candidates have worked with the most successful clients and our least successful clients. So we've compiled all that data and just created kind of like a checklist, like, hey, if you want to be successful, you should do these tips. And I require my clients to sign that they've acknowledged, like, hey, this has proven to be successful. So that's one important tool. It starts with training and orientation. I know Don Vidas. He's one of my most successful clients, one of my favorite clients. And I remember when he told me that he did 3 days of training and orientation, he said, Clay, I had to invest a couple $1,000s in that. But in the end, that training and orientation helped his retention significantly. And that's where it starts. Our least successful clients are the ones that get our candidates and put them to work right away on day one. And obviously, and especially in the manual labor industry, you have work to do. And once you get this labor, you're excited. And you're like, let's get them to work. But that's not, in the long run, that is not going to be helpful for you. And so Don is a perfect example where he spent 2 to 3 days of orientation and training. So what does that orientation and training entail? A lot of it's just getting to know each other, and so we request and are almost require our clients to do a one-on-one meeting with every candidate starting on day one. Get to know each other, gain trust and loyalty. And by doing this one-on-one meeting, you're going to gain that trust and loyalty, and people will hopefully stay longer. And if they have an issue, they're going to feel comfortable to bring it up. So that's the first thing. Ryan can talk a little bit about, the rest of the orientation and training.
I'll also piggyback on that thought too. And as an employer, I think you need to be thinking about how are these employees talking about your business when you're not there? And how are they talking about your business? How are they presenting your business when you're not there to other people or other potential employees?
I got to interrupt. I'm glad you brought that up because that is my favorite question. I tell a lot of my clients that I say, imagine what your employees say about you on the weekends. If they're having beer with their buddies or talking to their wife or their girlfriend, what do you think they're saying about you? And what do you think they're saying about your business? So.
Exactly. Yeah. So in addition to the orientation, there are several things that employers can do to help them retain these employees. And one of them is providing incentives. And this is an obvious one, I think. And I think a lot of people already do this. Financial incentives, also cultural incentives. And so financial incentives, it could be something as simple as deciding that they're going to pay for airfare. One of the things that we have our clients do is we have them pay for the airfare up front, and then later on, those candidates will pay them back for that airfare. But as an incentive to stay the entire 6 or 8 months, if it's a temporary position, you can say, well, we'll pay for that flight. You're no longer responsible for paying for that flight. So that's one, and people can get creative and provide all kinds of financial incentives or bonuses. Take them out to eat when they first get there. They could also have cultural incentives, I don't know, like having a baseball team that all of them get together and play on, or having picnics.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that oftentimes create more camaraderie and a team or a family kind of environment.
Yeah.
That are good.
Cultural, this isn't really an incentive, but a cultural, just something part of their company culture. A very successful client of mine in Columbus, they have the flag of every single, nationality that's represented in their company. So when I went to visit there, they have H-2B workers, they have people from Puerto Rico, they have people from America, they have people from all over. And so they had these flags in their shop, and it was really cool. It was really cool to show that they recognize that, back to the incentives. I think what I tell a lot of my clients, especially my clients that pay more, back to the financial incentives, if a client tells me, we're willing to start people off at $17 an hour, I'm like, wow, that, for me and what I've seen for landscaping, that's very competitive. So I say, well, how about instead of starting them off at 17 an hour, why don't you start them off at $15 an hour? And if they stay up to a certain point, let's say 5 months, if they stay 5 months, then you will back pay them $2 an hour for those 5 months that they worked. And so it's like a huge bonus that they get if they stay that long. And then that sequence can start over again for the next 5 months. And so that's been super successful. I know Bob Maffei up in Massachusetts, he does something similar to that. I know you've met Bob in person, and he's got some really amazing, unique, cultural and financial incentives to keep people.
Yeah, Bob had, when I went and visited him last summer, he told me that in addition to back paying them for staying a certain amount of time, he also incentivized them to keep people in their house together. So say there's 4 guys living in a house together, and one of them is like, dude, I've had enough, I'm out of here. The other 3 guys are more incentivized to keep him on board. And like you said, the name of the game is retention, not necessarily recruiting. And so they would get an additional $1 at the end of the year for every hour that they worked if their whole house stayed together. And I think that's just amazing, and it's working for him. He's got 100% retention when I was there, and he's loving it. So yeah.
Great company.
I would also just add on that too, things that are pretty simple, uniforms. So making people feel proud about where they're working, and providing them opportunities to grow. Once they've gotten trained, they can become champions in that particular skill and get paid more. Give them raises or give them new opportunities that help them develop their self-confidence. That's always really good. Also, flexibility in terms of time off, and sometimes we get requests from people who they have an emergency and they want to go home for the weekend, and they're willing to pay the cost of the flight, the return trip. And so they, for sure that person will be coming back, and you can show them that you trust them to go away for the weekend and come back, and you provide them with that opportunity. Sure, this is going to work on a case-by-case basis, I think, and you have to already have established a level of trust with someone to do that, but being able to provide that flexibility goes a long way.
Yeah.
Do people usually write that in their job description, or do they make that evident that they can go home at any point and have a vacation? Because I know with H-2B, a lot of the guys expect a vacation, or expect to get to go home for a week when maybe the company's not as busy. Is that similar from recruiting in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I think a lot of my clients, they say, do you want us to put this on there? I don't like to set a number on it, because I don't want people to get that idea right from the start, like it's a free for all and they can go back at any times. But I do have them put something in there like, flexible with time off, or we allow you to go home once a year, twice a year, whatever it is. But I think in the end, it's just about being flexible. And I think people need to earn that flexibility. Like the better of an employee you are, the more flexibility a client or a company is going to want to give to you. So,
Kelly, you had asked about what makes MRC the most trusted recruiting company in Puerto Rico. And there were a number of things that came to my head, both on the client side and on the candidate side. And I'll just mention a couple things. On the candidate side, So when we're recruiting, one of the things that we do a lot is we communicate via WhatsApp. And with our Spanish language skills, we're able to talk to these people in a professional manner, but also in a way that friends might communicate. We are in touch immediately. So if these people text us, we text them right back.
Yeah. Every day of the year.
Pretty much, not at all hours of the day, but I would say from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like we are in contact with them.
Yeah.
And
I was texting guys on Christmas today.
Right. So and this is how we work. We respond immediately or as fast as we can because time is of the essence. A lot of these people, they don't have a job. They need a job now. They don't have any money. And so we're able to provide these people that are in an economically disadvantaged situation an opportunity to move out of that, come out of that, and then start providing for their families. And the way that we communicate is perfect for the way that people communicate, or it's directly in alignment with the way that people communicate in Puerto Rico. So I think that has worked in a really good way for us. Also on the client side, one of my jobs as an account manager, or I'd say my primary job as an account manager is to be in contact as much as possible with these clients, make sure that things are going okay, and also help them with these situations. We've dealt with situations before that arise, and we've seen anything under the sun, really. I mean, this is human resources, right? As good a job as vetting as we try to do, sometimes we still get bad eggs who just provide nightmare experiences. And so how do we go about helping the client through these types of situations? And so I spend a lot of time on the phone with these people trying to help them and trying to figure out the best way forward for both parties. And so I think people really value that. And we as a company also we strive to provide that trust between us and the clients that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been kind of changing it up a little bit, but as you were talking about the recruits and communicating with them all the time, it's been a couple of years since the hurricane, and how did that impact the business? I mean, I know now they're getting pretty well recovered, and people are having cell phone reception and things like that again. But is that still impacting MRC and the business? Is it still making a difference on whether or not people are staying on the island and jobs on the island? And what's the state of Puerto Rico since the hurricane?
That's a good question. I mean, it definitely was after the hurricane. I mean, it was the state of the island was a lot worse for a lot longer than the media portrayed it. I can say that for sure. But I've been back a few times since the hurricane. I'm going back in a week, and it's pretty much on its way to being fully recovered, I would say. But there were a lot of jobs. I was talking to a woman the other day that I met. She owned a gym. Actually, we worked out at that gym in Naranjito for like a week straight when we were starting the business. But I texted her, I'm like, hey, how's business? And she's like, I lost the business in the hurricane. It's really sad, but like. So a lot of jobs were lost, but there are a lot more jobs being created. But for MRC, after, about a year and a couple months of trying to figure out if it was a positive, I hate saying a positive. It's not a positive at all, but it was, a lot of people left the island and they moved to the States permanently looking for better jobs. But a lot of those people that moved to the States are now calling us looking for employment. A lot of people on the island, a lot of people that were in the States went back to the island. A lot of people from Puerto Rico that were already on the island or already in the States went back to support their family. They had to go back to the island to help rebuild their house. So in the end, our numbers didn't really change. It was kind of like a balance, but I'm just glad to know that the island's fully recovered. And I'm also really glad to know that we were able to help people in such a hard time, because a lot of people lost jobs and they called us and they asked us for jobs. I was actually running some numbers the other day and realized, I haven't told you this yet, but I realized that in 2017, MRC was responsible for roughly over $25 million of revenue for people in Puerto Rico, from Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Ryan, did you realize that there was such a need for labor and for workers to find jobs?
I really didn't, Kelly. Honestly, this has been an eye-opening experience for me, and everyone should know what a dire situation it is in this country, with the labor situation. People just aren't getting workers, and they can't get workers. People that had local walk-ins. But I just talked to a gentleman today. He said 2 years ago they could count on at least 10 local walk-ins. Now they're getting about 2 local walk-ins.
How often?
Per year.
Per year? Oh
yeah,
my God.
So this is
Wow.
at the beginning of their season. They're trying to hire people, and so yeah, imagine that. And then so many people relying on the H-2B program for their labor, and now they're just not getting these people there anymore because of the H-2B cap. And so it's to me, I think it's a real crisis, and we're hearing so much about the immigration crisis in this country, and not to get political at all, but I will firsthand be the one to tell you, like, we have a severe shortage of individuals, and like one of the leading causes of this is because people aren't getting their H-2B workers now, that used to fill these positions. And quite simply, a lot of these types of general labor positions, many Americans just don't want to work. They don't want these jobs. They don't want that kind of work. So we need to really rethink this, and we really need to rethink how we go about providing labor, and using new avenues like MRC to help meet those labor shortages, or compensate for those labor shortages.
Yeah. And I want to elaborate on that. I mean, I personally, as an American, I believe in the H-2B program, and I know you do too. I mean, I think if it could be improved, I don't want to go into all the details of the H-2B program, but I do believe that our company at this moment we do rely or need immigrant labor. But at the same time, I mean, yes, using H-2B is great. Using people from Puerto Rico is great. That's a benefit to my business. But in the end, it's like something major needs to change. And that's kind of like one of the main topics that we want to discuss today, is just the retention and company culture. And it's like, I tell people this all the time. We have a serious problem with retention and labor. So you need to make a serious change. So whatever that is, it doesn't mean like working with MRC isn't the only answer. Working with H-2B isn't the only answer. I mean, you have to have a huge shift in your company culture, your company practices, how you onboard, how you pay people, your training. I mean, the whole package, and there's so many different things you can do to do that. But it's like everyone, I'm like, well, what are you doing to fix the problem? They're like, well, I'm putting up a radio ad. Like, how's that any different than what everyone else is doing, So I'd like to know, not to put you on the spot or anything, but, you've been working a lot in the landscape industry for the, past 10 years of your life or more. What's your opinion on all of it?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the H-2B program as well, and think, if they could figure out how to make that work and be more reliable as an option for people, I'm all for it. As of now, it just isn't it's a lottery at this point. And I don't know you guys probably know, but I don't know if maybe listeners know about they had people logging in at midnight on New Year's Eve to place their request. And I just don't, their system failed. Meanwhile, the government's shut down. So there's, like you said, a serious problem there. But when I was working in the landscape industry, some of the things that we did was really increase the proactivity of our hiring. So a lot of people use this term overwintering employees, and we made it a point to find work for them for over the winter, even though it's challenging financially. But Americans want year-round jobs. They want to be there. They want to know that every week they're going to get a paycheck, and every week it's going to have 40 hours on it or more. And that includes December, and includes January. So we found things for them to do. We moved up, bed cleanup, shovel edging, and mulching to really early bed cleanup, shovel edge really early in the year, and then would hold off on the mulching until residential clients wanted that to happen. find new services for them, for guys to do in those kind of off seasons was huge. So really being proactive with the recruiting was one. And then the other thing was the training and onboarding. We came up with an online orientation. And so that helped too, because they knew where everything was before they got there. We gave them like an 11 or 12-minute video tour of here's the shop, here's where you park, here's how we drive in one circle in one direction around the building, here's where the bathroom is, here's what you bring on your first day, and kind of alleviate a little bit of those questions and that fear of starting a new job. So the onboarding was huge. And then the training, every week have training and get people involved in the training. So even if you're new, you can still be a leader at one of those training or tailgate meetings. We helped people get certifications, like lawn care certifications, by paying for it and setting up on Tuesday mornings. If you got there early, you could come in and study. And we had like a full study group. I think it started with like 14 people who all were going to get their applicator license. And I think about 6 or 7 of us actually went through the whole thing and we did it. And then the company paid for it. So a lot of things like that, yeah, were really helpful and appealing. Keeping up the social media presence as far as how the company's culture works, showing the cool things we did, bringing in an ice cream truck on hot days and stuff like that. You know, people look at social media and they're on their phones all the time, especially when they're, if they're job hunting was a big thing. And speaking of that, if there's a lot of great people out there who aren't job hunting, and you have to find them. Like, you have to go to them and recruit them. So it's no longer a passive game where you just scroll down the list of Indeed or post something up on Craigslist and set it and forget it. I don't think those are viable options anymore. I think you really have to go after who you want. You have to use your LinkedIn network. You have to use your Facebook network. You have to get creative. Go stand at gas stations and give out ice or hot dogs or snow cones or something, and hand out flyers, and recruit. I know it's crazy to think, but if you want your business to be successful, you might have to put in a little bit of extra work to get these people and to keep these people. So when my thinking is every option is a good option. I mean, try them. Like, try MRC and try to recruit from Puerto Rico. Try to recruit from Puerto Rico on your own. Like, try to do the H-2B program, like participate in that. Try to hire locally. Try to hire a headhunter. Like, whatever the options are, I don't think that there's a bad one. I think that there's a lot of viable options. I think one of the things that I did see as a trend for being very successful last year with some of the companies I worked with was they had a specific person to be that recruiting and retention person. And sometimes this person was the same as their marketing person, depending on the size of the company, but sometimes it was their only role. And it wasn't HR. They weren't the HR manager, but they were that recruiting person. And for a smaller business, I know that's not sustainable. And usually it falls on the plate of the owner or the office manager or something like that, administrative assistant. But it's worth, I think, the salary to put somebody in that role to be constantly looking for talent and constantly supporting your talent on board. To have that person who's, and the ones that were successful, 9 times out of 10, they were bilingual. And to have that person who could speak their language and communicate and really make them feel welcome no matter who they were. Those were the companies that were very successful last year in recruiting the whole entire year and then keeping people around. So those are kind of my thoughts.
That sounds like a pretty progressive, companies that create those types of positions. That's just a progressive move. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, this is 2019. And so you're not going to be successful in terms of retention if you just do things like the way people have been doing for the past, 30 years, so right. It's all about being progressive. I mean, one thing that I talked to, at a seminar a couple of weeks ago was how, and this is a sensitive subject, but in Denver, Colorado, it's not a sensitive subject, but a lot of people are starting to not drug test for cannabis. And I'm not like pro, being high on cannabis while you're working, but a lot of people are not getting allowed, you can't hire people because, a lot of people are failing drug tests for cannabis. You know what I mean? A pre-employment drug test, they're failing it because of cannabis. And so I have spoken to a handful of companies now that they are starting to talk to their insurance companies, and they're waiving cannabis on a drug test. So that's just like one thing that some companies are starting to do to be able to at least bring on more people.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing, and I wouldn't consider that like lowering your standards. I mean, that's like the way you phrased it was great. It's a progressive move. I mean, before you know it, weed dealers are going to be a thing of the past. Like you can just go and buy weed in most places. So I think that I think that is critical. One thing I would ask you guys, or what your thoughts are, is what about criminal records? I mean, you don't want to lower your standards, but at the same time, if you're a company that has to start somebody at a low dollar amount, I'm talking maybe 12 or 13 bucks an hour, usually these people come from a background that isn't like an MBA. So, do you guys do criminal record background checks, or do you let the clients do it? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we do a criminal background check in Puerto Rico. But in the end, it's, the decision of our client, if they're going to hire someone, if there is an issue. I personally, and the values of my business, we are a second choice employer. I don't need to go into the details of what exact infraction that someone might have, but in the end, it's the decision of our client and what they're, in writing, whatever it is that they have that, they will or will not accept, because that's a client based, based on each client and their unique stipulations. So
yeah, I was recently working with a client who works for a business that isn't necessarily, they're not necessarily sticklers on having a perfect record, but they do, they provide housing for these individuals, and the housing required that they pass this background check. So one of our candidates who we've actually worked with before, and we have a really good relationship with him, and he's done good work for us. He does have he has some misdemeanors on his record, which were probably, I want to say 8 to 10 years ago, and he's been clean since. And so this is the type of situation where I would talk to the client, say like, okay, this is the record that they have, and then we actually were able to get his housing application approved, just because we kind of take everything into context, and we want to provide people these second chances that they really do deserve if they prove themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one last thing about criminal backgrounds. My mentor, he does some consulting for a company, in that company, I don't want to say they specialize in hiring, ex-felons, but I think like 80% of their employees, I'm pretty sure it's a factory, and 80% of their employees are ex-felons, and their retention is absolutely incredible. Like they're, because these are people that have been reformed, and they, they've been trained, and they're going to value a job a lot more than just anyone off the street. And so this has been like, and they've, it's a safe environment. They've been trained and the expectations, but I mean, this company is booming because they don't have a labor shortage or a labor problem, because they are specifically trained, connecting with organizations and getting ex-felons. So just another little progressive thing that people need to think about, I mean, back to what I always say, labor is a serious problem, so you need to make a serious change, right?
Easy for you to say, millennial. Oh man. So all right, that's great. We've talked about things companies can do, things that MRC does to help companies. We've talked about some of the good recruits we've had, maybe some of the not so good recruits we've had, and so I guess I'm curious about the future of MRC. What do you see going forward? Right now it is January, and it's snowing, but people I think they're getting pretty antsy to get people in the door. So are you guys getting busy? What's your plan?
Yeah, so this, we are approaching the busiest time of the year for us. We do about 70% of our revenue in recruiting in February, March, April, May. So, I mean, it's our
Wow.
busy times. We're getting booked up really quick for people that need labor, or requesting labor from Puerto Rico. So, we are approaching the busiest time of the year. That's why I'm about to go down to Puerto Rico, one-way ticket, as always, as I like to do. And we are also pretty excited to do this. We're also starting to recruit account managers, operations managers. We have a local recruiting option as well. So, for those clients that don't want to have to do their housing option and provide housing and fly people from Puerto Rico, we have a local recruiting option, which is very complicated. It hasn't been as nearly as successful at all, but, depending on the client and how many people they're requesting in what city they're in, we can try to find local employees for them. But the biggest changes this year are recruiting higher level positions and also offering translation services. So our team is 100% bilingual, pretty much speaking English and Spanish from the time they were 5 years old, and educated in both languages since they were 5 years old. So we do translation of job offers, but also handbooks and things like that.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Ryan, are you excited about the company growth and the future for you at MRC?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a really great place to be. It's a great place to work. It's a great environment. I think what keeps me going doing this type of work is watching people who come from nothing, watching them move to the United States, watching them excel, watching them help the company that they're working for gain money, increase their revenue, ultimately make their endeavor more successful, and then move their families to the United States who start to do the same thing, or even come on with the same company and provide other types of labor that company might need at the moment, whether it's housekeeping or whether it's cleaning pools or anything in the hospitality industry, factories, landscaping. So that is, it warms my heart to see these success stories, to see people coming in, improving their lives, but also meeting the needs of these companies that would otherwise be going out of business in a year or two.
Yeah.
So it's really helping our economy thrive.
That's awesome. And it's great you get to see the results of that. So Clay or Ryan, remind us what industries you guys cover.
Yeah, so we've grown a lot in that. I started off recruiting primarily for the landscape industry, but now it's grown to manufacturing, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, stores, some nursing homes. I've had a kids camp reach out to me. Pretty much everything, like, companies that need CDL drivers,
nursing homes.
Yeah.
Is there a majority of what people want to do from the Puerto Ricans? Are they like, oh, we really like working in factories, or we really like landscaping? Do you see any trends like that?
It's been a mix. I think a lot of the people from Puerto Rico, they do prefer, I don't like to generalize, but I feel like a lot of them do request factories, but a lot of them do like landscaping, just because they're kind of used to like doing that at home. Not landscaping exactly, but like agricultural work. But a lot of requests for factories. But a lot of what we're seeing now, and I'm excited about a couple clients that we've got on the books right now, are companies that are accepting couples, because a lot of men or women reach out to us and they're like, hey, I want a job, but also I need a job for my husband or wife or significant other, and I don't want to leave without them. And it's hard for us in those situations because obviously we don't discriminate against if you're male or female, but the problem is the housing. And so, when you have most of our jobs are landscaping, so our clients provide the housing and it's all men. So I'm not going to bring like a wife of someone in to live in a house with 10 men. But a lot of our clients are recognizing that, and they're creating positions for, that might be attractive to both sexes. But more importantly, they're creating housing environments that will allow these people to come there as a couple or as a family. And then that's going to have more sustainable results.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, and I didn't run this by you before we started, so if you want me to crop it out, just let me know. But what are people doing as far as when they get their recruits in and using them to recruit, or like how do you guys keep hold of that? You know, because I heard of people that just get a couple guys in, they use MRC, and then they use them to recruit and then move on. I mean, is that can't be a sustainable business model, but how does that work for you guys, and what trends are you seeing?
That's a good question. So I recognize that, and so in my service agreement, we have a clause where if a client wants to utilize candidates that we've recruited to recruit other people and not involve us at all, I do have a fee that's in my service agreement for that situation, but we are not involved at all. So that facilitates a little bit of residual income for us. Not even residual income, but because if I allowed free game for everyone, we might not be in business as much. So I've put that in my service agreement, and people respect it. And it's not like the type of thing where I want to have to get my lawyer involved, but I hear things. We know what's going on. Like, the candidates tell us everything. So occasionally I've had to tell a client, like, hey, I heard that you recruited XYZ person on your own. You owe us that fee, And
that's one of these touchy subjects. Some clients don't like to hear that, and they don't understand why that is in effect. But if it wasn't in effect, our business would essentially go under. I mean, it's like that. That's a serious issue. So we also, the thing is that these people who are making these references, they would have no idea about them if they weren't there to begin with, and they're there because of MRC.
Right.
So that's the main message to really set
Sure.
home. And most clients understand that, and they respect that. We do get some people that don't quite understand why that is in effect, but it's there essentially to protect what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's why, I tell my clients that ahead of time, they read the service agreement, but it's a lot of work. I mean, recruiting people, and that, it's so much work. I have boots on the ground in Puerto Rico. We're talking to these candidates all hours of the day, every day of the year. I mean, Christmas, I'm, texting, calling people, and, it's just, it's a lot of work. So that's why I appreciate my account managers on my team, but also my team members that are in Puerto Rico working for MRC, because it's hard to have a social life. When you're working with this, when you're recruiting the capacity and the amount of people that we're recruiting a year, it's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of in-person interviews. It's a lot of texting. And, I kind of joked with this a while back with someone, but like during my busy season last year, I was on my phone so much. I was dating a girl from Brazil, and she broke up with me because I was on my phone so much. So, but
well,
I think
in her defense, you did tell me that you went to the bathroom on a date so you could send text messages out. So
yeah, well, that's good news for my clients, right? Bad news for the women that might be trying to date. So, but we take it seriously. So, yeah. Any other questions, Kelly?
Yeah, well, so kind of piggybacking on that, I'll let you guys go after this. But what about with H2B, the guys go home, or gals go home at a certain point? Are people utilizing the Puerto Ricans in the same manner? Are they keeping them through the whole year? And I'm probably speaking more towards the landscaping.
Yeah, it's a mix. A lot of our candidates, I would say the majority of our candidates do want to work 9 months and go home and come back. But some of them want to stay year round. Some of them want to establish a life in the States. Some of them are establishing a life in the States. And a lot of our clients are recognizing that. So a lot of our clients are offering year round work, with the flexibility option of also allowing them to stay just a season and going home. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, and many people will say, well, okay, we can provide full-time work, but we can't necessarily guarantee 40 hours a week in the wintertime. But we might be able to guarantee, we can work in the shop and then guarantee 30 hours a week. So there are a lot of those situations too.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would say, I would agree with Clay when he says that the majority of these people are looking to go home for a little while to spend time with their families, if their families aren't already here. So that 9 month on, 3 months off scenario is actually attractive to them. But I mean, there are people who are looking for those full-time positions as well, and we're certainly looking for clients that are willing to offer that.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, it's been awesome chatting with you as always. Love seeing your faces, and we'll put this online and see what people think. Post some comments for us and more questions if you guys have them.
Yeah.
And Clay, I'll see you in Puerto Rico in about a week or so.
Yeah. See you in a couple weeks. Thanks, Kelly.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
I appreciate your time.
Bye.
Bye.